That is my mindset. I operate on a level of excellence, and you guys need to wake up every single day, and you need to operate on a level of excellence and create your masterpiece. What's up, guys? I'm really excited about this special episode and my special guest, Rick Denley, somebody that I have been watching as another successful keynote speaker and connected with online. I'm really excited for you to hear my episode in this interview with Rick. But let me just dive in and share a little bit with you about Rick. Rick is a best-selling author of Reinvent Yourself, an actor on TV shows, top $1 million agent, and Canada Renos. He comes from being an undefeated amateur boxer, raising funds and awareness for cancer research. I absolutely love that. With 25 plus years of leadership and coaching experience, some while heading multinational corporations, Rick is regarded as a top authority on change and growth leadership. So without further ado, let's dive into this podcast and this episode with Rick Denley. Hey guys, I'm really excited to get in this episode of the Personal Perseverance Project. You heard my intro with Rick, and I'm really excited that Rick is on the show, his background, what he's going to share with you guys, his knowledge, him being an author, all the things that he's been through. It's somebody that I really got to connect with online, that I look up to in his accomplishments. So without further ado, let's dive right into this. So welcome to the show, Rick. Thank you so much for coming on.
David, thanks for having me here and putting me in front of your audience. What a great honor. I love following you and your podcast and the energy level you bring.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And the same goes to you and what you do and taking health serious and all those things, Rick. I love it. But I'd love to just dive right in so the listeners can hear. Really, I like to always start with hearing more about you, your story, your background, and then ultimately getting to what you're doing now and your success as a speaker. But for people that don't know you, I often like to say, share your background, where you came from, and some of your story.
Well, I appreciate that, David. Location-wise, I'm here in beautiful Niagara Falls, and I get the opportunity with great scenery to live in this great environment that we have. I spent over 25 years in the corporate world, leading teams for multinational organizations. Throughout that time frame, there's extensive travel involved, and I worked for 3 major companies and corporations from different parts of the world, one from France, one from the US, and one from Germany. So I got to see a lot of different culture and approaches to what I like to focus on now, which is leadership. Now, following that, I made a choice to go out on my own. I made a change, and I wanted to go out because I didn't feel I was having enough of an impact on enough people. So I left the corporate world. And yeah, as you mentioned, I wrote this book that went bestseller called Reinvent Yourself, all about change and going through the change and how to do a lot of great things I'm going to talk about today, because I found people didn't understand how to change and move forward when needed. As you say, personal perseverance. How do we do that going forward? And I wrote the book. Now, the interesting thing is that the book got launched. I had a multi-city North American tour set up. And after coming off stage in Houston, flew back home, and the pandemic hit.
Oh.
Right then, my plans changed incredibly for me. So that might be one of the changes that we talk a little bit about here as well today. But it's brought me on the pathway now where I love getting on stages and helping educate, motivate, and move people into that positive action and getting them to be the very best version of themselves.
I love that. And I know that a big part of taking that step is having that leap of faith and having that mindset. Whether I think of when I decided to retire from the state police and pursue, being a speaker and these other things, there's that space you live in. And it's probably, the title of your book, Reinvent Yourself. I'd love to hear you share like that transition for you and dive into what it actually means for those people. Because I do think a lot of people, they're in careers that maybe they aren't fulfilled with, they aren't happy with, right, Rick? They're not going after their goals and dreams. And I'm all about, no, don't live with regret in your life. So take us through that. Like, what's your thoughts on that? You seem to have an expert knowledge with it.
Well, thank you. It's interesting because I kid people that I'm actually a recovering engineer. So my first formal education out of school was engineering.
Wow.
And I do have that analytical side of me of brains, of formulas and devouring and creating programs and things. So I did come up with a formula that it's kind of a success formula. And I put that in the book and we talk about it there. And, the skills, tools, and knowledge that you need, along with what we call grit, is what's going to get you there. And how do you harness that going forward? Now, David, the one big reason, the main reason that people don't change or reinvent themselves is fear. Now, as we know, with fear, the best thing we can do is really face everything and rise, right? We don't want to fear everything and run. We want to face everything and rise. So we dedicated a chapter in the book right here to harnessing fear energy, to identifying what the fear is, and then looking at, dissecting it and figuring it out so that then we can turn it around and harness that energy going forward, not having it subdue us, but actually having it pump us up. So that's an important chapter in the book when we talk about it. Because listen, when you talk about reinvention, you're talking about growth. As you said, somebody wants to become the very best version of themselves, professionally, personally, all of these different areas. How do they do it? Well, it comes down to one thing. And it's one of the three constants in the world today. Yeah, we've got death and taxes. I can't do much about either of those with death. And my accountant looks after my taxes for me. But the third one is change. Now, change, there's really only two types of change. There's a type of change that comes our way that we didn't ask for. And that one, and you'll love this one here, is a real punch in the face. All right. That is one that we didn't ask for, probably didn't even want. The other type of change is the one that we initiate. That's the one that we can hold ourselves accountable for. That's the one that we have a lot of passion about. So I try and get people to understand, get out in front and lead the change that you want to see. Don't sit back and let it all happen to you. Take the reins and get out in front and lead that type of change. That's what Reinvent Yourself is all about, whether it's personal growth, whether it's career growth. This is going to help you get there.
I love that. And I love the fear chapter because I think fear is what stops most people. And what have you found, Rick, is like when people finally do take that first step, is it because they finally, are sick and tired of being sick and tired, or is it they have a strong why? Like, what have you, when they finally take that leap, what have you seen?
Several reasons. One, people get pushed to the point where the pain that they're experiencing now is going to be less than the potential pain of changing. You see that?
Yeah.
And listen, and that's what it's all about. It's about harnessing that fear energy and moving through it, knowing that at the end of the day, you're not going to die from that type of change.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. You really aren't. Now, listen, I know change is scary at first. It's really messy in the middle, but I guarantee you, David, and your viewers, that it's beautiful at the end.
Absolutely.
So get through all those tough steps, as you say, with persistence and grit, and you'll come out the other end better and exactly who and where you want to be. People tell me, well, change is hard. Change hurts. David, change doesn't hurt. Resistance to change, that might hurt.
Yeah.
So get on with the change. Take that first step moving forward, even if you're fearful. Even if you can't overcome the fear, even if you can't harness the fear energy, do it anyways. That's called courage. Doing something with fear inside you is called courage, and that's okay too.
Right. And it's interesting you say that because when I do speak, I say we all have fear, but there's just one word to help you face that fear, and that's courage. And that's just having the courage to take that first step, right? Absolutely. And not worrying about, what's ahead in 3, 6, 9 months. Like, work with what's in front of you and take that first step.
David, can I make one more suggestion on change?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I suggest in my book and to people on stages when I speak, share it, put it out there. I know some say hustle in silence. I say put the change out there that you want to happen. Why? A few reasons. Number one, you're going to be held accountable by yourself and others around you. If you put it out there that you're going to go run a marathon, you better get out and train because you told everybody you're going to do it. Right. So that's really important. Secondly, the universe helps conspire towards you when you put it out there and say, I'm going to do this, there's nothing stopping me. And all this momentum builds around it. So I say, put it out there and keep pursuing it
Right.
out in front of everybody.
I love it. And I think another point you bring up is grit. Because I have learned, like, when you face the change, when you go through the next door and you're trying to go forward, you're
Yeah.
going to face resistance. You're going to have failures. You know, we quickly spoke
Right.
about things before this call. There's ups and downs in life. That's part of it. It's not a reason to give up. It's not a
No.
reason to stop, you know, but when you pursue it, it's part of the process. But grit, I mean, talk about grit. I think that I love that word because I think
Yeah.
it's super important.
Here, I want to break that down a little bit for you. And I did a lot of reading on, and I came up with that word because my formula is all about, hey, you have to have the right tools, skills, and knowledge. Times grit. Without the grit, you're useless. You
Right.
have to have that grit. Angela Duckworth wrote a great book called Grit. And she is a Harvard trained psychologist. And what she did was go out and what she did was look at all the different aspects that made people successful, whether you're a politician, whether you're an athlete, whether you're in business, entrepreneur, whether you're a mom and dad at home. And she broke it down to two elements: passion and persistence. Now, she went on to talk about those and how to implement them. But if we're looking at making sure that we have skill sets that get us through tough times, passion and persistence is something that people can be working on a regular basis. I mean, nobody's going to do it for you. We know that at the end of the day. So we really need to be sure that we strengthen ourselves in those areas. In fact, the final skill set I'll suggest people really get good at is adaptability. If we can be adaptable for the changes that come our way that we didn't ask for, we've got the ones under control that we create. But the one that comes our way that we didn't ask for is the one that we have to be very adaptable to. And that's happened to me when the world shut down because of the pandemic and I had this big tour set up for my books and so on. I didn't control that. I didn't ask for that, but I had to be adaptable. Out of those tours, we ended up with 4 that went virtual. And virtual wasn't a big thing then, but we created it so that it was. So we adapted our presentation format to hang on to those presentations and keynotes, making them virtual. That's being adaptable.
I love it. I love it. It's like sometimes I like to say no excuses, just adjustments. Because
Oh, adjustments. I like that.
you because we constantly have to adjust. You're constantly
Constantly.
constantly.
Don't change. Here's what I tell people to do: don't change your dream. Because things got hard, things changed, and so on. Don't change your dream. Change how you get to it. And you just mentioned that too. And being adaptable is a big part of that as well.
Absolutely. And I also find, and I think, not think, I know John Gordon talks about it, you know, another best-selling author, and he talks about you need to love what you do as well. So if you have a dream, it should be something you're passionately pursuing because that's what's going to push you to be having the passion, the persistence, making the adjustments to push forward because you love it. Right.
Right.
And I think another fear is that fear of regret. You know, you
Mhm.
don't want people, I think so many people you hear about, they look back and you don't get the time back. So you
No,
need
it's the number one reason on people's deathbeds they say that they regret. They wish they had have taken that chance,
Right.
taken that step back then. Don't wait until it's too late to do so,
Mm,
until you're on your deathbed and then you have regrets. Have no regrets. Take those leaps whenever you can. And like I say, the worst you can do is fall down, get back up, and try again. You cannot beat someone who won't quit.
yeah.
As long as you keep getting up, you keep moving forward.
I love that. Right. Just don't stop. Don't stop. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So does this all fall under what you call your growth change formula, Rick? I know that's a big thing that you have that I read about. So is that what you speak on the growth change formula? Is this all these moving parts?
It's all tied into it because, again, I'm process oriented. So I created what I call that change process, which I feel is very successful. It will greatly improve. In fact, the book here is written like a blueprint, and it's
Mm,
got all sorts of sections for readers to fill in their
mm.
goals, their passions. What are they trying to do? What is their fear? Let's identify it and address it and move past it. And it's all built into that formula for helping them be more successful. Not everybody knows how to change successfully. And I'd been through enough change in my personal and professional lives that I thought, geez, there's kind of a method that seems to work here. So I
Right.
managed to pull it together, and people have told me in reading the book, it's been very helpful for them.
I like that. So for you, you didn't just not only do this through, say, research and what you lived through what your book is. right?
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody has challenges in life. And it's rather interesting because I don't want your viewers to think what my oldest son, who's quite a literary, read a draft of this several years ago when I was first producing the book. And I said, give me your feedback. And he said, okay. He said, well, Dad, you know what? It's a good book. You wrote it in your voice, which I did.
Right.
And he said, it's a pretty good book for an entitled middle-aged white guy. And I went, wow, he's right. Hang on a minute. Why is it all about me only in this situation? And yeah, I put in there about challenges that we had and things like that. So I altered the book. I listened and I adapted. And now I have chapters in there from all different people at different walks of life than
Ah, I love that.
myself. Yeah, my partner Laura's in there about the challenges that she's gone through, as a woman and
Right.
career and family. And then, I mentioned, and you brought it up too, I needed to give back. When I turned 50, I needed to do more philanthropy. And not having millions of dollars, I wanted to figure out how I could combine philanthropy with exercise. And there's all sorts of great events and fundraisers out there. This one was called Fight 10 Cancer, where they took a bunch of working people, white collar type people who had no experience at it, trained us for 8 months, and then put us in the ring at a Vegas style event to fight
Wow.
cancer. Yeah, in boxing. So
How long
really
ago
had to
was
push
this?
myself in this event, which was brilliant. And I'm training with other team members in their 20s and 30s, and I was not. And so that pushed me into becoming a carded amateur fighter to raise funds and awareness for cancer. Now,
Wow.
the interesting part about that is I got to meet some really great, interesting individuals. And one of our main coaches didn't have the upbringing in life that I did.
Mm,
Unfortunately, had abusive alcoholic parents and had a whole different story to tell. He's in here. So
wow.
he's got a chapter in here as well. So I realized that I really had to look into the diversity side of things as well and combine those stories into the book so that it had a greater impact on a larger audience. So I had the dream to write the book. I had to adapt it a little bit to make it
I love
be
it.
what it really could be at the end of the day. So there's some really good stories in that book that I think will have an impact on most readers.
I love it. I love it because the stories is the connective tissue. It's the bridge. I always say people don't buy in to the product, they buy into you. And when you can have that connective tissue, like you had other stories in your book, that's really
Yes.
powerful. So how long ago was the boxing and the cancer, what you did and for the 8 months? How long ago was that?
So that happened 5 years ago when I stepped into the ring for the very first time for
Wow.
myself after 8 months of training. And it was a brilliant event. We raised $1 million that night towards cancer research. And cancer impacts everybody. So it's really something that we have to get a handle on. So I learned a lot through that. You'll read some really funny stories in the book about that. As one of my teammates taught me, a younger gentleman, a lot of reverse mentoring going on there because, hey, I was the oldest one in the gym. And he said, you know what? He said, your ego is not your amigo.
Wow. I
Your
like
ego
that.
is not your amigo. And he was right. Once you can set aside the ego, you can get so much more done in a more productive way as well. And you tend to take a little less hits to the face, we'll say, when you can set that aside. So all sorts of good learnings in that. The other story that I won't go into too much, but I just want to tip on, David, is on the personal side.
Go
And
for it.
that same son that I talked about, I have two boys.
Mm,
Back in the early teenage years, he was about 14, and he was a gifted athlete, scholar in school, straight A student, and so on. And one morning couldn't get out of bed.
hmm.
This went on for several mornings, and then we tried to talk about it with him and things like that. Then we started going to see doctors, hospital stays, and so on. And we found out that what he had was clinical depression, which
Mm,
can come on to anybody at any given time. That was the punch in the face I didn't see coming in our family. And that changed our whole dynamic. And through a lot of work and doctors, psychologists, and things like that, we've gotten a good handle on it. But it was a real blow to our family and to him, and even to me, where I thought, you know what, I'm a pretty good dad. I'm doing a good job here. What am I doing wrong? And after several months of therapy for my son and such, one day he came out of a session with the doctor and I said, Dad, doctor wants to speak to you. And I thought, oh, okay. Maybe the payment didn't go through or something. So in I go.
right.
And the doctor sits me down for a minute and she goes, you don't fix this. I said, what do you mean? She said, you don't fix this. I know your dad. I know you fix everything and that's your role. You don't fix this.
Mm,
And she could tell I was frustrated because it's tough to see your child go through this.
right.
Very tough because you don't control it.
Right.
And I said to her, then what do I do? And she said, you become that great dad that you were before going forward. I said, well, how do I do that? She says, you change. She said, now what you need for your son is empathy and listening and time.
Mm,
Not to be driving him all over to different sports and so on.
right.
So it changed how I needed to lead and the
Wow.
person that I needed to be, and I had to adapt.
Mm,
So I had to sit aside the ego that thought, hey, I'm a good dad. I've done everything right. What's happening that's wrong? It's not about you, in
yeah.
a way, is what I got told. And so I had to change and adapt to that going forward. So there's a lot of learnings throughout our personal life and our careers as well. And again, much of that's captured in the book. And there's some good stories for people there because listen, David, everybody's going through something.
Oh,
You're either cleaning up a mess on some sort of mission or moving forward in some way or another.
right.
And that's the commonality that we all have. And when, I talk on leadership, and when we can become a more empathetic leader, then we're being courageous. It's easy to be the leader that pounds the desk and asks for more and drives people.
Right.
But the leadership that we need nowadays for people, whether you're a parent, whether you're in business, career minded, running not for profit organizations, is that empathetic type of leader. And that's what I call courageous leadership.
I love it. And you make me think of my own kids. I have three daughters, and there's something I once heard: small kids, small problems; big kids, big problems. And now with my oldest, a freshman in college, and my middle one just turning 16, being a sophomore, just
Right.
they're going through as young ladies and the change. And it could be very easy for me because I'm very self-driven and motivated and let's go. But there's a
Right.
part you hit the nail on the head, Rick. It's just about being empathetic, being understanding, not being the Mr. Fix It. I totally, when you said that, I'm like, wow, because that's normally what we want to do as dads. I'm going to
Right.
make this right. But in
Right.
the end, really, the best thing to do is to listen and be understanding and to navigate that. And that's a really touching, powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Yeah, you're welcome. Everybody's going through something, and we all have our challenges. And when my son called me entitled, I thought, well, no, I'm not entitled. I work hard for everything I do and so on.
Right.
That has nothing to do with it. Entitled is just being born into the life that I was and
Yeah.
am at this time. But when change comes our way, that's when we really show what we're made of, that we have the ability and tenacity to push through, but to also be soft. In the gym, you know what we call it in the gym, David?
What's that?
We call it iron fist velvet glove.
Ooh, I like that.
You want to be really strong underneath, but you got to have a little bit of a soft coating on it as well.
I like that.
Because that tenderness is so important to individuals. You can't just tell somebody, well, get over it, get past it. And what I learned as well for people that are going through it or have experienced it or have loved ones that do, especially with depression, is that it's not weakness, it's a sickness.
Yeah.
And it's not something you simply push through. So keep that in mind going
I
forward.
love it.
Today's leadership is courage.
I love that. And it's amazing. Think about it. Your kids became one of your best teachers in something like this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah, I got handed something that I didn't ask for, but either way, I had to get out in front and lead it.
Right, right. So powerful. So Rick, let me ask you this. I always like to ask people, if there's somebody right now there's somebody that feels stuck, that wants to improve, reinvent their life, but they don't know where to start. That person, take yourself back to maybe where you took that leap of faith and change. What would you tell somebody if you were coaching them? I'm ready. I am burnt out. I need to make that reinvention. Where would you tell somebody like that to start?
Well, you know what? I'll tell them this. I'll tell them this. It's in here. And it's been in there for weeks, months, maybe years, and they know that.
Yeah.
The idea is to get it out of here so you don't become this guy.
Mm.
Get it out of your head, that idea that you've had, how
Yeah.
you want to change, what needs to happen. Write it down. We know that when we write things down, they start to become real. They take a life of their own, which is hugely important. If you're confused and you don't know how to take that first step and move forward, listen, my book's a great, great step for you. And I'm not into selling books. That's not what it's about. It's available on Amazon. If you can't afford the book, shoot me a note at my contact information on my website. I'll mail you one. I have no problem with that.
Right.
And start going through that process and learning what it's all about. I can also mention to people, and I do this fun thing from stage, is that your brain can be rewired. If you say, well, I'm not good at change. Oh, I know we're supposed to be. We're supposed to embrace change and love change, but nobody does because our brains are reptilian brains from thousands of years ago. Start small with changes. I
Mhm.
kid people in the audience, how many people still like timepieces? I love watches.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, okay, take your watch off and I want you to put it on the other wrist. And, people fumble around with it. I've seen people drop them, unfortunately. And finally, we get it on that wrist. I said, I want you to do that for 21 days. By the end of the 21 days, you're slapping that watch on your wrist, no problem, just like that. You've now rewired your brain. And you
Mhm.
rewired your brain to accept change. Small change leads to big change. And you will start to not only accept and embrace it, but love change and crave it on a regular basis.
I love that. That's a really great point. 21 days, switch it over. Probably you could probably start writing lefty, and after 3 weeks, you'll be amazed how far you came if you're a righty. But that's great. I love it. So Rick, let me ask you
Absolutely.
this. A question I always like to ask any of my guests. You've
Yeah.
accomplished a lot. You've done a lot. You're making an impact. How would you want to be remembered? How would you want people to remember Rick with all that you've done? Like if there was a couple sentences, how would you wrap that up and say you want to be remembered as what? Because it's very impressive what you have accomplished. But I'd love to hear it from your heart.
Well, thank you. And I don't feel that I've even accomplished enough of what I want to just yet, David. It was funny because about a month ago, I was in one of the local shopping malls, and I'll say a young man getting up in age now, in his 20s, started making a beeline for me across the mall, had a big smile on his face, and he got closer to me, and I kind of looked at him, and he said, Coach, it's me, it's Jason. And I said, Jason, oh my goodness, it's been a while. He said, yeah, you coached me when I was 15 with your son. Well, my son's 28 now.
Wow.
And he came across, he said, I just want to thank you. I said, thank me for what? He said, I said, you're not an NHL player. I didn't help there. He said, no, you taught me the things that mattered. You taught me to show up on time, clean equipment, have the right attitude. Just when he called me coach, David, that filled my heart.
Oh yeah.
If I can be remembered as anything, it would be as a coach, somebody that helps somebody be better at whatever it was they're passionate about, somebody that helped them grow, overcome the hurdles, and achieve the best version of themselves from a coaching aspect. That would fill my heart.
I love it because I once heard by John Addison, an author. I saw him as a speaker actually, and he said, except for one tiny speck on this earth, it's made up of people other than you, and it's about others.
Yeah.
Make it
Yeah.
about
If I can
others.
help others, you have to. One thing I learned, one rule overall that I learned, or one thing, forget the rule part of it, is that we need to live a life of gratitude.
Yes.
And when we shift our mindset towards being grateful for what we have, even while we pursue what we want,
Yeah.
things become so much better because we really should be grateful for what we have.
Absolutely. And focus on what you do have and not what you don't have. And that's a practice every morning. I focus on gratitude because it gets you out of the lack mindset. I absolutely love that. So Rick,
Fabulous.
I have to applaud you with everything you've done, you've accomplished, sharing your words of wisdom
Thank
here,
you.
your book, Reinvent Yourself. Just there's so much there. And I think it's so applicable to people right now, people coming out of the pandemic, because I saw in some of the surveys that I've done at speaking events that the number one thing people are dealing right now is they feel stuck. They're procrastinating. They need to move forward. And what you talk about, what your book about, I have to applaud you for you doing it in your life. But
Thank you.
really, I think it will make such an impact in the world and everybody that's there. So thank you so much for that. And I guess the last thing is, where can people find you? Where can they connect with you if they want to? I know you said your book is on Amazon, but are there any other places? I can put it in the show notes, but share where people can find you and connect
Yeah,
with you.
absolutely. I'm frequently on Instagram, which is my social media means. You'll find me from a business aspect as well on LinkedIn, but Instagram, it's Rick Denley. Connect with me, follow me. I'm always doing daily updates for people as well. And then as well on my website, www.rickdenley.com. And there's a lot of ongoing information. There are my what I call my motivational minutes on there that people can watch as well. If you're having a down day, try and get you pumped up a little bit. And that's how they can contact me as well, David.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rick. It was absolutely amazing getting to connect and hear your
Thanks,
story.
David.
And to all the listeners, please share this episode. Rick has so much to share. Like I always say, nobody can be successful by themselves. We all are stronger together. And the way we change the world and we change lives for the better and let people know they're not alone when they struggle is by sharing messages like this and sharing what Rick shared. So, guys, with that, thank you for listening to the show. And we will talk to everybody next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Personal Perseverance Project. My goal every single day is to help people live up to their fullest potential. So please share this episode, subscribe to my channel, and maybe even leave a review. Be sure to connect and follow me on all my social media channels. And if you would like more information about me potentially being a keynote speaker at your event, or maybe you want to work with me one-on-one as your private coach, be sure to go to my website at davidatkins.com for more information. Thank you.